It's impossible to imagine our world without the internet. But what if I told you there was a time before the internet when the entire human race had access to more information than they knew what to do with? Welcome to the channel. And today let's investigate the incredible mystery of the greatest library that ever existed. But first, if you want to experience more amazing stories like this one, be sure to hit that subscribe button, because we've only just begun. Imagine yourself back in the days before the internet, when the only way to share knowledge was through books. To learn something new, you had to go out and buy a book, assuming that someone had bothered to write down the information you were looking for in the first place. Today, if you want to learn something new, you can simply search online and find thousands of results in a matter of seconds. But 2,000 years ago, the situation was quite different. If you wanted to learn something new, you had to travel to Alexandria, Egypt, to the greatest library the world had ever known. The Library of Alexandria was started by Ptolemy I, who was one of the generals of Alexander the Great's army. After Alexander died, Ptolemy decided to create a special place in his new capital city of Alexandria, a place that would become the center of the ancient world. Every year, Ptolemy hired ships to travel the world and bring him books. He offered these sailors generous payments for rare books, and anyone who delivered him a book that he didn't already have was rewarded with double the money. Ptolemy also commissioned copies of these books to be made so that the originals could be returned to their owners. These copies were then kept in his great library. Ptolemy's successors continued his work, expanding the collection until it was home to over 500,000 books, which was about 20% of all the books that had been written up to that point. At the height of its power, the library received a steady stream of new books from ships coming into port in Alexandria. Scholars from all over the world came to use the collection and copy texts, and the library became the cultural and intellectual heart of the ancient world. As the books piled up, the royals in charge of the library realized they needed a better way to keep track of their collection, so they created the first ever cataloging system. Every book was given a unique identification number, which allowed the librarians to keep track of the collection and make sure that no books were lost. Each book's description was written on a clay tablet, and whenever a book came in or left the library, the record was updated. At its peak, it was said that the library held the collected works of every author in the ancient world, and the royal scholars simply couldn't keep up with the flow of incoming texts. Some stories say that ships would arrive and the librarians wouldn't even unload them because there were so many books that they just piled up in the harbors of Alexandria. Although it's believed that the main library held around 500,000 books, some sources say the total number of books in Alexandria could have reached upwards of 900,000 texts. That's because throughout the city, there were other libraries attached to temples and schools, and private citizens would often donate their collections to the main library upon their death. Most of the books in the library were written on papyrus, a type of paper made from reeds that grew along the Nile River. Papyrus was durable but not waterproof, and many of the books were damaged by floods. Other books were written on parchment, which was made from the skins of goats and sheep. Parchment was more expensive but also more durable and waterproof. Many of the most important books in the library were written on parchment, including the works of Homer, Euclid, Ptolemy, and Sappho. In addition to books, the library also held many other types of texts, including scrolls, tablets, and even pieces of pottery. Some of these artifacts date back to the earliest days of human civilization, while others were written just a few decades before they arrived in Alexandria. It wasn't just the sheer number of texts that made the library so special. It was also the wide variety of topics covered. The library held books on everything from philosophy and science to history and literature. There were also many practical works, such as medical texts and how-to manuals. In fact, the library is believed to have been one of the first places in the ancient world where people went to study medicine. Many of the most famous doctors in the ancient world, such as Galen and Cyrannus, trained in Alexandria. If you were a student in Alexandria, you didn't just sit in a classroom listening to a teacher drone on. Instead, you had to do your own research and come up with your own conclusions. You could examine specimens in the library's museum, and you could even dissect human bodies in the library's mortuary. So if you were interested in medicine, law, engineering, or any other subject that was taught in Alexandria, you could find plenty of resources to help you study. But it wasn't just students who flocked to the library. Scholars from all over the ancient world came to Alexandria to do research and write their own works. The library provided them with the resources they needed to succeed, including books, scrolls, tablets, and even pieces of pottery. In fact, many of the most famous writers in the ancient world, such as Plutarch and Strabo, lived in Alexandria for a time and wrote some of their best-known works there. Unfortunately, the library didn't last forever. It was destroyed in a series of fires that took place between 48 and 39 BCE. Although the exact cause of the fires is unknown, it's believed that they were started accidentally during Julius Caesar's siege of the city. Still, despite its tragic end, the library's legacy lived on. Its collection was dispersed throughout the Roman Empire, and its cataloging system was used in other libraries for centuries. In fact, it's believed that the library inspired the creation of the Library of Congress. While we will never know exactly what was lost in the burning of the Library of Alexandria, we do have some clues as to the sorts of things that it might have contained. One of the most famous works believed to have been housed in the library was a lost epic poem attributed to Homer called the Hymn to Aphrodite. The poem was said to have detailed the origins of the universe and the nature of the gods. Unfortunately, the poem was destroyed in a fire sometime before the 4th century CE. Another lost text believed to have been in the library was Euclid's lost work called The Origins. The book was said to have detailed the history of Alexandria and its library. Unfortunately, it was destroyed sometime before the 10th century. Finally, one of the most valuable works lost in the burning of the library was a set of star maps attributed to the astronomer Ptolemy. The maps were said to be so accurate that they remained in use for centuries. However, they were eventually destroyed, likely in the 12th or 13th century. Loved what you just saw? Don't go anywhere. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more exciting updates and fun content coming your way. We can't wait to share more with you.